Good morning, Group A. Today we are going to look at something called keeping things cool. So cool is the opposite of warm. So let's get started. Today's date is the 9th of February 2021 and your title for today is Keeping Things Cool. So what we're going to do first is, again, we're going to do some vocabulary. And before I look at the vocabulary, what you need to do is you need to go to your worksheet, and in your worksheet there is vocabulary which you need to learn. Okay, so here we've got some pictures, and the vocabulary I give you now has to match the pictures to be right in. Okay, so let's get started, and once we finish the vocabulary, go back to this page, fill in the English word and find out what the French word is for this object, okay, or for this word. So let's get started. So the first word that we've got is the word fridge. Listen carefully to pronunciation, please. So fridge. We have freezer, freezer. We have something called rotten, rotten. Whole, whole. Fresh, fresh. And then straw, straw. Next vocab that we've got, so remember we're going to fill this in on our vocabulary sheet, is the word lake, lake. Diarrhea, quite unusual spelling, diarrhea, and I suspect the French is very, very similar, if not the same. Vomit, rich, and dome shape. Dome shape. Okay, so let's look at the word fresh and rotten. So fresh and rotten are opposites. Okay, they are opposites. So if we look here, we have a fresh apple. Okay, and I don't know about you, but I love apples, especially red ones. So this is a fresh apple. Fresh meaning that it's just come from the tree, it's ready to eat, and it looks delicious. So we say this is a fresh apple. Now, if I leave this apple outside and I leave it for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, the apple changes and the apple becomes like this. Now, this apple is not fresh. This is not a fresh apple. So we say that this is a rotten apple. This is a rotten apple. And we won't eat this, would we? If our apple becomes like this, we would throw it away. We won't eat this. So what can we do to slow down food, because apple is a food, food changing from being fresh, changing to being rotten? How can we slow it down? Now the problem is that when we eat certain rotten food, it can make you very ill, very ill. Now ill means you become very sick. Now that should actually be on the vocab list, but we're not going to put it there. So if you eat certain rotten food, maybe not the apple, but certain food, if it becomes rotten, you eat it, you become very sick. So for example, rotten meat like chicken or beef or turkey or duck and eggs are very dangerous to eat. So if you eat an egg that's rotten, it is very dangerous. And the reason why it's dangerous is because rotten eggs and other food can cause something called salmonella infections. Salmonella infections. Now, salmonella is a disease or an illness which can cause severe diarrhea and vomiting. So diarrhea and vomiting. So it can make you very, very sick. So that's why we've got to be very careful about rotten food. We've got to be very, very careful because rotten food can make us very sick because inside the food there's something called salmonella. All right, so here is a simple solution to slow down rotting is we use something called a fridge. So this is a fridge. You can see there's lots of food and drinks inside the fridge. Now I don't know if you can recognize any of it. What is this one here? Do you know what this is? Now this is in English. Remember, not French. This is in English. This is pineapple. Pineapple. Okay, we've got some tomatoes here. We've got some carrots, some broccoli, I think these are peppers. We've got potato. Let's see what else we got. We've got eggs. We've got yogurt. And we've got some juices here. We've maybe got some orange juice. We've got some water. And we've got some milk. So we put the food inside the fridge. And the reason why we put the food inside the fridge, because first of all, the food is kept cool. The fridge keeps it cool. But more importantly, the food will stay fresh for longer. Okay, it will stay fresh for longer. Now the temperature inside the fridge is about between 1 to 8 degrees Celsius. It's about 1 degree Celsius, okay? And now even though it slows down rotting, we can't keep it in here for too long. It will still, so my milk, if I leave it here for a month or 2 months, it will still go rotten, okay? And then I won't be able to drink it. All right, so this is called a fridge. Now we have something which is very similar to a fridge. It's very, very similar, but actually it's colder. It is colder. So can you tell me, or do you know what this is called? And I'm sure you do. This is called a freezer. It's called a freezer. Now in a freezer, we keep things like ice. I can't see any ice here. No, I can't. Ice cream. I can see some ice cream here. You can keep meat and other frozen food. So meat, again, I can't see any meat in here, but I can see, so maybe there's some meat in here, but I can see some frozen food. I can see some pizza. I can see some apple pie. I can see some strawberries. And possibly, I'm not sure what this is, but maybe these are yogurts as well. Okay. And I can see some pasta, maybe some fish in there. Oh, it says shrimp. So it's got some shrimp in there. So this is a freezer. Now, a freezer is colder than a fridge. It is much, much colder. The temperature in here is about minus 18 degrees Celsius. And this just means we can keep this food for much longer than in a fridge. Okay, so food in a freezer we can keep longer. Now let's look at some history. When was the first refrigerator invented? So we're now in 2021. Okay, it is more than 100 years ago when the first fridge was available to people for their homes. Okay, so this is the very, very first fridge that people had in their houses. And this was developed in 1913. 1913, so it's quite a long time ago, more than 100 years, 108 years. But a good question would be to ask, what did we do before we had fridges? So before we had any fridges, how do we keep food cool? Now, quite often people couldn't keep food cool because they just weren't rich enough. But if you were rich and you had lots of money, you had something which was called an ice house. Now an ice house looks something like this. Okay, you can see it's in the ground. It's in the ground. It's covered by lots of soil, and the ice was kept inside here. Now where did the ice come from? Okay, so in the winter, people were to go to frozen lakes and they would take the ice from the lakes and they would take it to this building, to this ice house, and they'll put it inside the ice house. And this will stay cool for long periods throughout the year. And here you can see some ladies delivering ice to someone's house. And this was 1916. Okay, so what is an ice house? Now, first of all, an ice house is in the ground. It's built in the ground. So this is the ground. So it's underneath the ground. And it is covered by this dome shape here. It's covered by this dome shape. And then what they do is they fill it with ice. Okay, so we have a dome shape here. They fill it with ice, and then in between the ice, they use straw. Okay, they use straw. So they put straw in between the ice. And this helps keeps the ice frozen for a long time. It helps keep the ice frozen. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is once you have finished your vocabulary, we're going to do a reading exercise. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to read for you these three sections, 1, 2, 3. And then what I'd like you to do is to practice reading these, practice reading. Some of the words are actually quite difficult, so you need to listen very carefully. And when you finish listening, I would like you to read this for me on Seesaw. So I would like you to do a recording of you reading it on Seesaw. Okay, there's a microphone in Seesaw, so it's quite easy to do a recording. So let's get started. Okay, so how can we keep things cold? People who lived over 100 years ago did not have fridges, but rich families had ice houses. These were rooms dug into the ground in winter. How can we keep things cold? People who lived over 100 years ago did not have fridges, but rich families had ice houses. These were rooms dug into the ground. In winter, the servants cut ice from the rivers, put it in the ice house, and covered it in straw. The straw and the earth around the ice house helped stop the ice melting. Okay, so listen to that again and then practice it, and then you can do a recording for me. Now, if there are any words you're not sure what the words mean, you can either ask mum or dad, or you can look it up. So, for example, servants, you might want to look up what servants mean. You might look up the word melting. Okay, but you should know straw. You should know the word rich families, and you've got fridges here. Okay, next one. The ice houses were used to supply ice for drinks and to make ice cream. They were also used as places to store meat and fish to stop them going off. Okay, so in these ice houses, they also put meat, fish, and everything else in here, which will then freeze it. And it's almost like a freezer. It's almost like a freezer. So not only did they keep the ice, but they sometimes kept food in here. Last one. If a winter was not cold enough, there would be a shortage of ice. Between about 1820 and 1920, ice used to be brought on ships from the USA and Norway. This ice was stored in deep wells in warehouses, and each day some of this ice was delivered to people's houses. Okay, this one's quite a difficult one, so try your best. And again, between this period, probably not England or Britain didn't have much, wasn't cold enough for the lakes and rivers to freeze over. So they had to get the ice from the USA and from Norway. So that must have been very, very expensive to buy. Okay. So last thing that I would like you to do once you've finished that is at the bottom of your page, you have a fridge. Okay, now the fridge is empty. No, this is not a freezer, it's a fridge. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to draw on this items that we might find in a fridge. Okay, so you can either draw a Coke bottle, some butter or cheese, some fruit or bread, plastic boxes with food in it, chicken, milk, anything that you think should go in the fridge. And for some inspiration, I've got some images here for you that you could look at. So we can see some watermelon, we can see some milk. Okay, so if you can draw with pencil, okay, on your diagram here, and then you can color it in for me, please. Okay, and again, you can take a picture of it and send it to me in Seesaw.